Welcome, everybody, to the very first episode of Web3 Weekly, brought to you by Museigen and Web3 Weekly. I'm Nick, and I'm here today with a great friend and mentor, Mr. Moe Iman. Moe is the founder of Founders Hub, and I thought we would just kick things off by letting Moe introduce himself. Moe and I were both at the Wiki Expo on Saturday, and today we plan to unpack the Wiki Expo and really dive deep into what startups are made of. So Moe, take it away, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Museigen, for having me on the show today. Really appreciate you organizing this live stream. I'm going to try and keep it short and brief so I don't really bore all the listeners that are tuning in right now and the ones later. So my name is Moe Iman.
Not possible, sir. Not possible.
Well, I hope so. All right. And I have a very diversified background when it comes to where I am today and what I'm doing with Founders Hub. But before I get to that, maybe just a quick recap on my background. I started off in fashion retail in Qatar, worked that industry for about 2 years. When quickly I was introduced to the banking, traditional finance sector, where I entered and worked with Standard Chartered Bank in retail banking and did that for about 3.5 years. When quickly I got headhunted and moved to another bank called International Bank of Qatar, where I was working for another 3 years in investment banking and retail banking, pivoting quite from there into sports management and worked for the Olympic Committee for another 7 years as head of branding, marketing, and communications, delivering about 72 global events. One of the biggest one being the International Handball Federation, which catered to about 80,000 attendees. And things changed from there. And I decided to go and explore life a bit more. That's when I chose to call Asia home, moved to Bangkok, went on a training camp in Phuket, where I just fell in love with the concept of health and wellness. And from there, ended up opening the first Australian fitness franchise called F45 Training in Bangkok, before pivoting into another Muay Thai training facility. And when the pandemic came around, that's the time I decided to get quite active and full-time into Web3, start working with a protocol DAO on Solana. And a few years later, here I am now as the founder of Founders Hub. And in a nutshell, what Founders Hub does is we work with founders on different stages. We provide them the resources, technology, knowledge base, mentorship, and access to ensure that they just are not the next founder, but are also becoming a well-rounded entrepreneur.
Nice. Love it. That's quite the versatile background, Moe. And again, just another reason why I'm grateful to have you on the first show of Web3 Weekly. You and I were both at the event on Saturday, right? And yes. For those of you who don't know, the Wiki Expo is a massive event. They travel around. They were in Bangkok at the Marriott this past weekend. I believe they're going to Dubai soon. They were recently in Hong Kong, but you can catch them on their socials. They have many different kind of regions. There's the Wiki Expo in Southeast Asia, but it truly is a global expo, right? And one of the things that kept coming back around, perhaps it was the timing with the market not being so good, but one of the questions that kept coming back around during the Wiki Expo was actually geared towards founders, right? So you being a founder yourself, I'm curious, I want to ask you the same question. Like, what keeps you going? What keeps you consistent, even during the bear market or during this volatile time where perhaps funding dries up, liquidity dries up, and a lot of people, let's be honest, like a lot of people kind of panic and perhaps maybe leave the space?
Very good question. And I think it's also down to, it's not just the funding that dries up or the resources, right? Whenever there's a bear market, one of the things that's unspoken is that a lot of talent pivots back to traditional sectors. So people who were committed to working with startups start doubting startups when the bear market comes around, and they try to reconsider getting back into traditional sectors, corporate jobs. To answer your question, I think for any founder, irrespective, not just Web3, if you are building, build for the long term. When you're building for the long term, you plan out for the next 5 years to 7 years as a bare minimum. Given if you do understand the entrepreneurship landscape, then you will take into consideration the worst case scenario more often than the best case scenarios.
Understood. Yeah, no, and that was pretty much the consensus. You could tell the builders from the traders at the expo over the weekend, because the traders were talking about the market, the traders were talking about the sentiment, the traders were talking about their portfolio, while the builders were just focused, irrespective of what the market was doing. The builders were that I spoke to were staying true to their vision. And for more context, like I was on the panel. I was fortunate enough to be a part of the panel, and the panel topic was global expansion strategies for crypto and Web3 startups. Right? We had three other founders on the stage. Panaki, the founder of Afi Network, Jonathan, founder of Museigen, and Lana, co-founder of ICP Synergy Labs, right? And they were not talking about the day-to-day, landscape. They were long-term, like you said, which is bullish in general, because I think we've all been around long enough to see that those who have a longer time horizon are the ones who win, right? As long as you have a North Star, as long as you have that path forward and you keep your eyes on the prize, which is what I found during the panel. I mean, it was a privilege to be there, but the consensus from all three guests was that bull market or bear market, it's for them, it's the build market, right? So just wanted to get your overall thoughts on the event itself. Like, we were there for a bit, we caught up for a minute, and I know it's not your first rodeo, you've been to many events, but how'd you find it?
It was quite interesting. I found it quite well organized, structured. There were, I believe, two stages that was really good. One was in English, the other one was in Thai. So localization was taken into consideration. This is really important and vital, as quite a few events, when they do set up, they're either all in English or all in Thai, and they don't really do the separation. So coming back to understanding the culture, understanding the region, the audience, this was very well thought of, taken into consideration. The people present there, some of the talks were very enlightening, some were quite questionable, some were quite educational, but as the organizers and everyone present, the quality of the event was no doubt really well presented, well thought out.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good point, right? The one stage that catered to Thai speakers, the other stage that catered to more international speakers. That brings me to the question that I asked on the panel, right? Like, how does a startup in Web3 expand globally? And I know you touched on, like, and we'll get into it later, but I know you touched on your background with Web2, right? And the accolades that you have in Qatar. But I'm curious, before diving into a global market, what are the key steps that a Web3 startup should consider?
I think there's a few, right? Understanding what does it mean to get into a certain market. It's quite easy to Google or research from available information to say, let's say, for example, hey, we're going into Philippines, right, with our SaaS product. Now that's easier said than done. And for that vision to be a reality, you would need to collaborate, find the right synergy and the right partners on ground that can assist with your vision, ensuring that you as a startup and you as a startup founder or an investor do not end up overspending your resources or your runway trying to get into a market that you do not have much understanding of, which is all right, or B, you do not have the right partners in that market to help you penetrate that market with ease and with complete transparency.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, right? It seems like there's a lot of parallels to Web two, but you're someone who's been involved in both. I'm curious as to what you find similar, what you find different, because then we can get into some of the other things later on, like managing risk and stuff like that. And I know that the risk is different in terms of crypto and Web3 startups, but I'd love if you would elaborate a bit more on that, right? Just seeing that you've been on both sides of the spectrum.
I think there isn't much difference, right? But the idea behind Web3 is really to step in and be able to help cater to users that Web2 has ignored for the longest time, right? Whether that is by misleading them with the way their information is used, whether that is overcharging them for services, whether that is creating a bias on who can have access to certain tech and resources while others cannot. This is where Web3 steps in and says, we do not care about your race, your background, your religion, or your region. We treat everybody equal, right? It is decentralized, it is democratized, it is a fair playground.
Nice. Yeah, and it goes back to almost that foundation and that principle of decentralization over centralization, giving back to the user. Well, not even giving back, but like empowering the user. And I think you touched on a really good point. Like it's about the community more so in Web3. So as a founder yourself in Web3, tell me a little bit about, like, in your opinion, what does the community play? Like, what role does the community play in not only your expansion, but like in your sustainability of your startup in general?
Yeah, that's a very valid question. So I think across the board, and I'll try to zoom out and keep it short. Community plays a vital role, irrespective whether it's Web2 or Web3. In a simple term, that your users are your believers. Your believers are your ambassadors, they are your evangelists, they are your supporters, and they are your backers. We could take a very good example over here. Let's say if we go into combat sports, UFC, or we go into football, or we went into a brand such as, I don't know if I can mention brands here, but let's say Adidas, right? A lot of Adidas's content is created by users that are not even paid by Adidas. They actually pay Adidas to create content for Adidas, right? That is the power of community. And then others on different social networks see those individuals, those teams, those groups representing that brand. And that could be an apparel, that could be an electronic, that could be a food product, that could be a travel lounge, that could be a vehicle, and start associating a sense of belonging. In Web3, it's exactly that. People look for a community to find a sense of belonging, a shared vision, a shared purpose. With Founders Hub, we do the same with founders. We understand their struggles, even though they might be different founders on different stages, different level of expertise. They all go through the same challenge, right? How do I build? How do I ship? How do I survive the bear market? How do I become a better leader? How can I actually solve the problem for the millions of people that I've set out to solve?
Right. And that's actually a perfect segue, because I know we have some questions in the chat right now, and we're going to get to them. But I feel like the first one you just nailed. We had a question in the chat. from Janil, and she asked what the difference between a Web 2, Web 3. What is the difference between Web 2 and Web 3 for someone who's non-techie? And you mentioned it, right? You don't have to be a technical person to understand the power of leveraging a community and empowering your super users or your early adopters. In this case, your like, I like this quote from Jeff Butcher. It says like, an audience is someone that listens to you, and that's kind of more Web 2 to me. But a community is someone who responds to you and someone you respond back to. And that is the difference in my mind for a non-techie between Web 2 and Web 3, right? A community is someone or a group that responds to you, whereas your audience is that traditional one-way monologue.
And the best thing about Web3 is that the community has such a big power in the direction of the build. So they are hands-on with how you build certain features. You always have them to rely on and as your support, which is really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unlike a Web2 startup, where even though you are building for your users, the closest that you get to your users is survey forms or one-on-one interviews. In Web3, that barrier has been taken down, and you get to communicate with your users on a daily basis on X, on your Telegram groups, on your Discord groups. Your users are just a click away, right? Good users then become your ambassadors because they start believing, supporting, and complimenting the founder and the team where they cannot deliver or they might have challenges. So a great example here is memes, right? The meme culture just exploded because memes were nothing more than people trying to make fun of a difficult situation or find a bit of humor, right? They've led to communities now launching tokens which are just meme based, right? Who would have thought years back, if you had this conversation with someone, they would think that you're insane. And even now, a lot of people around the world think that's insanity or that's not possible. But if we zoom out, then that is the reality, right? So on that.
Yeah, love it. And it's great because Oscar has a question here, and Oscar is curious about our thoughts that keeping Web3 is something new, right? What do you think could be the risks involved for using a platform? Now, even before we get into like the risk involved for a platform and managing risks in a new emerging space, I think the obvious one that comes to mind that we just spoke about is the meme coin, right? Sometimes people say that like meme coins are a great entry, right? You look at Doge, you look at Shiba, they are maybe not necessarily the best thing for the space long term, you could argue, but they are great for bringing in new users. Like I personally am a big fan of it because, like you said, like memes are a great way to make difficult situations relevant, and what better way to do that on the internet that connects everybody. I would say, if your portfolio is only full of meme coins and you jumped in because that's what your taxi driver told you, that would be a potential risk. Understand that a lot of these things that are great for public adoption, are there, but they may not be your best bet for long-term onboarding, and certainly not for those who want to get into the space and build. I think there's something to be said about the risks in Web3. As you mentioned, where your community is only a click away, doesn't always mean that it's as easy. And I think with autonomy, with that kind of autonomy that you have, comes a great sense of responsibility, right? I mean, even if you look at certain basic things on Web3 where you can be your own bank, right? You could self-custody your coins, your Bitcoin, your meme coins, your ETH. With that, though, comes responsibility. That's a risk that I see. There's a massive gap in education that needs to be addressed, so we could kind
That's a good point there on education, right? And then another important thing is when the conversation of Web3 being new comes up, It isn't. We're almost a decade in with blockchain
True.
technology.
True.
It isn't really new. It's only growing now. So for those who are curious about how to navigate Web3, um, really take your time, commit a few minutes a day. That could be 10, 15 minutes a day. Go to authentic sources of information that are unbiased and understand the underlying technology, how it works, why it does what it does, right?
Yeah.
And try to approach it with a sense of curiosity rather than a sense of, I'm going to get rich with this in the next 3 days.
Yeah.
Because easy come is easy go. Our parents have taught us this. We've seen this on a global landscape. Generation wealth is not built by gambling.
Yeah, 100%. That's a fantastic point, Mo. And a shout out to Museigen for allowing us to have this opportunity to educate people, to connect from different parts of the world and connect the world to us. We have a question from Grace. She wants to know, Mo, how hard is it creating a startup community? Just based on your experience, and Mo, and feel free to flex here, man. You've been in the startup space for quite a while. You've had quite a lot of success. So do share that advice to Grace and to myself.
I think it's not difficult starting a company, right? Anybody can start a company. The challenge comes is, can you run a company? Is the biggest downfall, right? Given that 90% of startups fail, majority of founders run out of funding. Most VCs, 75% of their portfolio fails. All of these are very shocking numbers, right? And this happens because everyone wants to go at it as a dream that if everybody can do it, I can do it. And yes, you should, but you should do it with people who've been around, who've already done it and are doing it. It's the same way as thinking of yourself by saying, hey, I'm going to go and become the best Formula One driver. Sure, you could, right? But you could only get so far as opposed to working with a team of experts, coaches, trainers, professionals that can ensure that you actually make it down to the track. Startups are exactly the same journey. You can start a company, you can register one, you can launch it, but in order for you to be able to stay relevant and stay in the game, you do want to surround yourself with industry experts, with professionals, with resources, and with knowledge base.
Nice one. Yeah, absolutely. You're only as strong as your team, right? Speaking of game, this is a bit of a. We have another question, and thank you for everyone who's giving all the questions. Grace, everybody else, appreciate it. We have a question about tap to earn, which I think is again another way to provide an entry into the space. But like most iterations of new, how to say this, not new products, but new ways of engaging an audience or a community, they're gonna have to work some stuff out, right? So the question that we have is like, why do you think tap to earn is booming, even if most of these tokens have no real use cases?
Okay, cool. I think we're approaching a break soon, so I'm gonna answer that quickly.
Nice.
Tap to earn games are just the hype right now. It's the same thing as anything that grabs attention. It's a meme. It's relevant now, and then it's going to die out. It's quite easy to link, create a token, and associate with any idea. These tokens don't really hold much value. Again, if you are entering this just to have fun and play, this is great. Do so. You get to explore different games. You get to explore different dynamics. You get to explore the creator's point of view as to what they would want you to feel, because on the other side is a founder, is a creator, is a designer that's passionate about what they're building. So you get to see their final product. I would personally not recommend to invest into meme coins or tap to earn games to go into more than what you can lose, because their risk factor there is very probable and very high.
Yeah, and 100% agree. We are going to go to a short break soon, but I wrote about this in the Web3 weekly newsletter. I wrote about the things that are almost preventing us from getting to mass adoption, and that is one of them. So do check that out. And thank you for all the questions. Keep them coming. We'll be right back right after a short break, guys. Thank you.
Great setting and a conference that is one of its kind, you know?
I think the conference really brings together a lot of the leading players in Southeast Asia.
Goddamn, baby. I'm telling you. Run that back. Move like this. Run that back.
And we're back. And thank you all for staying with us. This is the inaugural episode of Web3 Weekly with Museigen. And Mo, before the break, you mentioned that 90% of startups often fail or fail to scale. Tell me a little bit about your startup and Founders Hub, and tell me a little bit about how you guys are helping reduce that number so that founders have a fighting shot.
Right. So with Founders Hub, the way we approach this is by understanding the unspoken reality of challenges with startups on a large scale. And this involves beyond the known facts, which is fragmentation of resources, lack of funding, uh, lack of product market fit, and a poor go to market strategy. If you break that down, this is high level, it's easy to categorize it. But when you start breaking that down and understanding really where the problem is, this is where Founders Hub comes in, right? So let's take poor go-to-market strategy. What does that really mean? Right now, one of the things in Web3 that is quite broken is the marketing itself. Web3 marketing is broken. Web3 marketing caters to a very small audience and retargets them and keeps catering to them. While the bigger narrative on the outside is we're onboarding the next billion users. And that's not going to happen because something that you mentioned earlier, for example, is the lack of education, right? If for as long as founders believe that the go-to-market standard in the current landscape is the one to follow, they will continue to fail. With Founders Hub, we do this by identifying really the strength, the weaknesses of every founder, their idea, their stage, and their team. And we then personalize and customize resources for them, whether that is training courses, one-on-one mentorship and coaching sessions, whether that's matchmaking, excuse me, with complementing advisors and mentors, whether that is helping them raise grants from a chain that they match well with, and whether that's going down the road and helping them get introduced to the right VCs and investors so that they can get that funding in and manage. But even prior to that, we help them become better founders by teaching them what it means to be a good founder, teaching them the soft skills that no accelerator, incubator, launchpad in the space wants to teach them, right? How do you hire individuals? How do you build a team culture? How do you manage your resources, whether that's technical, non-technical, those are financial, or human resources? How do you create valuable partnerships beyond just a tweet or beyond just an artwork on LinkedIn?
You know, you bring up a fantastic point, right? Because Web3 marketing does feel, at this stage at least, that it's run its course. It's pretty hard to differentiate. It sounds very similar. And the last thing that we need for onboarding the next billion users, as you mentioned, is an echo chamber, right? You mentioned education, and you know, education itself is a form of marketing. And the fact that so many startups or so many crypto and Web3 projects are doing the same old when it comes to tweets, when it comes to the way that they shill or promote their product, you know, it's a massive blind spot because they're missing out on the ability to educate their users. And when you have an educated community, you have a very powerful community. And I think that's one thing that is kind of drawn me to what you're doing at Founders Hub. You're cutting through all these silos. You're onboarding people, you're connecting dots, you're connecting people, and you're educating everybody. You're providing them with that sense of balance, that sense of consistency and grit. We have another question in the chat from Anne, and it is an education one. It's probably one that's above my education level, but I'll give it a shot and see if you know, Mo. How would you explain what a smart contract is to someone with zero knowledge?
So it's not the ethos of blockchain, but right, it has been a trustless system, a decentralized system, right, and a democratized one. A trustless system is one where two individuals, two organizations, two parties have an agreement and do not need a third party to enforce that agreement. Neither does any side need to supervise the other side to ensure that the job is done. So in a very simple case, if you and me have an agreement that's on a smart contract by saying, I show up to the space. I do the space for 45 minutes. At the end of this space, I get
Yeah.
a video recording of the space.
Hmm.
You do not need to check with me if I'm going to show up on time to the space, and you do not need to ensure that I am in the space doing what I say I'm going to be doing, right? And even to simplify it much easier, imagine you have 2 kids and you are a father, so you do have kids, right? And you tell your kids, hey, if you complete your homework, you're going to get this cookie, and the cookie is going to be in this box, right? And that box is the smart contract. Now, you do not want to supervise your child completing his or her homework, right? And once they do, this magic box automatically knows that this child has completed the task assigned to them, unlocks and gives them the cookie. That is a smart contract. It's a trustless system between 2 individuals, 2 organizations, 2 parties, where each party takes on a task, says that we will deliver certain things, right? And once they do, the other side has to reciprocate by holding up to their end of the bargain.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it cuts out that middleman, and the educational side to that would be, first we need to understand how some of these traditional transactions work, right? There's always a third party, whether it's dealing with privacy, whether it's dealing with data, whether it's just slowing it down and dealing with whatever centralized system it's running through and it's benefiting off of. We have another question from Ray, and it touches on privacy. How does Web3, and I can kind of talk to this a bit, but how does Web3 enhance user privacy compared to previous web iterations? And I do think we touched on it earlier, right? We touched on the fact that the blockchain itself is immutable, but it's also transparent. That being said, though, to understand privacy, you kind of have to understand how the current system works with data, and maybe look under the hood a little bit and find out what some of these brands or entities are doing with user data. But no, maybe you could help provide a little bit more insight on.
Yeah, I think very simple, right? Web 2, currently the challenge is, as soon as you log in with your Google, and whether we like it or not, your email, username, your first name, last name, potentially your passport details, your identity details are already on the dark web. They have been leaked, they have been sold multiple times. This is why, for example, when you open your Gmail or any other mail, you are bombarded with these new emails every day. And you're wondering, hold on a second, I never signed up to this. How are these people sending me these emails, right? That's because your identity is available online and on the black market and on the large scale. With Web3, you can protect your identity and your personal data. What does this mean? It means that you are but a code and you are just an address on the blockchain, right? Your wallet is so. And you can protect it by making sure that bad players do not know about your funds, your assets, and your transaction history. It also helps individuals on a larger scale to be able to control certain parts of their identity. Decentralized identity comes into play over here, whereby users can engage with different decentralized apps without having to disclose all their identity every time. They do it once, and then they use this login key to validate into any account that they're going in by saying, I am the person that I claim I am. It comes back to the same smart contract, right? If you say you are this, then you are who you say you are. And you don't need to validate that at every touch point. Whereas in traditional Web 2, you have to disclose a lot of your information every time you create a new account, whether that's uploading your photo, uploading your personal identification online. And you do not really know what they are doing with that, even though the terms and conditions do say that, well, we don't really do anything with it.
Yeah, 100%. And massive shout out to the Museigen community. These questions are fire. Like these are some great questions. Um, Again, doubling back to the theme of today's show, we're talking about the Wiki Finance Expo. We're talking about startups. We're talking about founders and everyone we met along the way. Um, we heard a lot of different keynotes and panel discussions. One particularly about you know chain wars and Ton chain or Polygon chain, ETH chain. It ties perfectly into the next question that we have from Ika, and she asked or he asked, sorry, what is the difference if you're building a blockchain on ETH, Polygon, and versus Solana versus ICP? Now, I'll chime in first, but I may be wrong. I'm just speaking from my own personal opinion. This is another one of those pieces that I wrote about before, where we need to move from the player versus player mentality. I believe the future is multi-chain. I don't think there's, like the Lord of the Rings, I don't think there's one chain to rule them all. If it is, it's Bitcoin. But when it comes to other altcoins and other chains, you find what works for you. We saw Solana meme coins take off. We saw great art on Tezos. We saw NFTs on ETH. We saw drawbacks from ETH in terms of high gas fees. We saw Solana take a rise because of the low gas fees. I think wherever there's competition, that's always a good thing for the space. It creates innovation. What we don't want, though, is people to get bogged down into becoming an ETH maxi or a Solana maxi, or we don't want this tribalism to ensue. There's a very fine line between a community and a cult, and I think when we start going down the rabbit hole, just like sports, right? You could be like a fan of the Chicago Bulls, or you could be a fan of basketball. You can still be a fan of both, but don't treat the chains like a team. Understand that what innovation's happening, what chains are being built, what new chain comes out next is pushing the space forward, and it's good for the space. But let me know if you have any thoughts on this, Mo, in regards to particularly building on different chains.
Yeah, I guess there's a few questions that you want to get answered when choosing a chain, right? It is what you're building. Does it align with that chain's profile, right? So if you're building a DeFi project, where would you want to build? You would want to then take a level down and understand, is your target audience on that exact chain? How much support is that chain going to be able to provide you? What resources do you have access to? And then the most important is, how quickly can you go multi-chain with your product? Because eventually, to survive and to scale and to be relevant and for mass adoption, most apps, most Web3 projects will have to go multi-chain. The narrative of single chain is almost going to be outdated quite quickly. That's a personal take, right? Because your end users should not have to worry about what chain is your application on. For example, the ones that are watching us now on Facebook do not even know what language Facebook is built on. Do they care? No. All they care is that was my cat. All they care is that they get to watch us, they get to learn, they get to engage, they get to interact, they get to be heard, right? What's the underlying technology? That should be irrelevant. And that's a big challenge with Web3 to date. Everyone's talking about which chain is superior to the other, rather than coming together, collaborating, and saying, we're all building to make a difference. Let's build that, and let's get enough people to use it, to believe it, and to see its benefit. Then maybe behind closed doors, we can argue about who's smarter and who's faster.
The
end user should have a frictionless experience, and that is really the goal.
That's right. I mean, I live abroad. You live abroad right now. We're both in Thailand. We don't question how our money is sent, when we're sending it with a few clicks of a button. And we're talking about traditional banking, right? We never question that. We don't question how the internet works. And I think that is something again that you're right. We need to move away from in order to understand that uh, uh, this type of adoption requires users, and when your family members can use it, when your brother can use it without having to
Well, the
understand the
whole idea
underlying tech.
is anybody should be able to use it, right?
Mm,
And I really want to shout out to all the listeners here, everyone that's tuned in. Thank you for
yeah.
taking the time to, listening to us, to asking these questions, to engaging with us, to participating. We hope that this show brings you more value. It gets you more curious. It gets you to
Mm,
learn some more. And really, that's what it is all about, right? We're here
mm,
to share and simplify the complexity that people feel Web3, blockchain, crypto really is, and make it so simple that anybody feels confident enough to walk in to say, hey, after this, or while on this right now, I have another window open where I'm Googling what is blockchain, right?
nice. Yeah.
How does blockchain technology work? What's the difference between Solana and Bitcoin? I'm curious now a bit more. Why is it called Web3? And this
Mm,
is, I guess, also a very good initiative from Museigen to make this a reality, right?
yes.
Getting these discussions in front of such a large audience, to getting them to participate without having to feel like they're not being heard, without feeling
Yes.
like, hey, if I ask something, would it be weird? No, it's not. Nothing is
No.
weird, right?
No.
This is why these live questions are so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to the Museigen community. We have over 300 viewers right now. And like I said, some stellar questions coming in. So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to reach out to us. Um, you know, this is something that we're all in together, and it's an exciting time. Like, what an exciting time to have an opportunity to participate in in a movement that is grounded in innovation, in technology, in community, and also like something that is very reliant on you, on each one of us, right? So giving that power back to the people is a massive reason why I'm a big fan of Web3. It's a reason why I continue to educate myself. It's a reason why I love having chats like this with you, Mo, because again, like you're a wealth of knowledge, and yeah, just really appreciate it. Um, I was curious, Mo, like how can our listeners out there find you? How can they learn more about not only Web3, but perhaps we have some builders that are listening. We have maybe some startup curious friends listening, or the entrepreneurs listening. Where may they go to learn more about you and Founders Hub?
They can find me on LinkedIn. So Moe Iman on LinkedIn, and then it's Founders Hub Tech on Twitter. You can always find me on my Twitter as well, which is at MoeIman.
Mm.
My cat's just here to say hi. I
Yeah.
apologize. I have six of them. And really happy to, I mean, that's the vision with Founders Hub. It's not just for the founders. The larger vision is that we want to be able to educate, empower, and create a sense of security and belonging for Web2 users, traditional users that are still dabbling with the idea of Web3 and do not want to get in with that idea or notion of, I have $10 and I'm going to make it $1,000. That is not going to happen. This
Mm.
is a long term play. We do not want to talk about gambling, but if you are here, want to learn a new skill, you want to be able to grow yourself, to create an additional source of income, um, then Web3 is the place to be. When I started off in Web3, I really had no idea about anything, and I'm being genuine, right? How the technology works, what are communities, all these terminologies. I just went in and I said, hi, I'm here. Where do I begin? I joined a few communities. I was, for a short time, just a bystander in the background, listening to people talk. And one day I just introduced myself. I broke the ice and I explained to them who I was, who I am, what drives my curiosity, and that I'm open to learning. And that was about 6 years back, and I've never turned back.
Love it, love it. I also learned the same way. Started off as a bystander, learned a lot from mistakes, but I mean, that's just part of the nature of learning. I think we all understand that failure is just the first attempt in learning. So going back to Mo's point, for everyone out there listening, like, there is no weird question. So keep it going. Keep getting involved. I mean, this is a great opportunity. What Museigen has done tonight has been fantastic, and what we hope to do in the future.
Really appreciate that.
Absolutely, same. Thank you. And what we hope to do in the future, to answer some of the questions in the chat, is to do this more often. A couple of friends asked if it's going to be weekly. It's not going to be weekly just yet. I do have a weekly newsletter called Web3 Weekly. You can find it on my LinkedIn as well. I'm Nick, and Nick Garvin on LinkedIn. Web3 Weekly is more or less a deep dive into the space. Exactly what Mo's talking about. Looking to kind of shed some more light, shed some more education to a larger audience in order to kind of push the space forward and to help people in their own journey. And by the way, Mo, everyone loves your cat. Like, I'm reading the comments.
Yeah, they will. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Where do we follow your cat? Online. But that's it. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. Thank you for everyone who asked these questions. Mo, thank you. Let's maybe one day in the future do this again.
Sure. Happy to. I'm really honored to be here. Really enjoyed the conversation, and especially all the questions from the audience. I guess for me, closing thoughts is stay curious, be open to new ideas, explore, and whenever in doubt, like, reach out to other people. We might, on the socials look very formal, but in the end, we're all humans. We are here to make sure that everybody wins. So get in touch with us, whether that's on a message, that's on a comment, on one of our LinkedIn posts, or on Twitter. Happy to help you share resources. And Museigen and team, thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, thank you to the Museigen team and everyone else. Big shout out to Jonathan. It was great to be on the panel with you at the Wiki Expo, Jonathan. And I know you're listening there somewhere in the background. Thank you for this opportunity. Very grateful, guys. So,
perfect. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Nick.
Bye. Thank you.
Museigen is Japanese for limitless, and we believe basically that's what we all are. We are all limitless once we set our minds to it. So our advocacy has always been to help grow the community through learning and education.
For me, anything that's happening in crypto, since it's pretty new, I'm taking it lahat siya maganda. Kasi wala namang nahinog na isang technology, investment, or any endeavor na walang pain point.
You can't get away from Bitcoin anymore. Because you don't have an excuse. I mean, it's on the stock exchange now. I mean, like, if you still don't want to have at least 1% of your portfolio in crypto, like, you're just being lazy now.
But we don't need to actually focus on what we lack, right? We need to focus on what we can do to fulfill that lack.